Hi, I'm Dr. Gwyn Erwin, and welcome back to my channel, Healing for Your Life. In today's video, we're going to be exploring the sixth keystone of my original model of healthy development. This playlist is the Developmental Roadmap. And this video today concerns hemispheric development. Now, in the last video on What About Feelings, we explored the autonomic nervous system and its two branches, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So we're going to be building on that today in understanding a certain amount about how our brain develops. Now, brain research and brain development is a vast field of knowledge, one we're going to barely scratch the surface of in 15 minutes or so. So we're going to focus on just a particular aspects of hemispheric development, so that then when we look at my later models on trauma and how to work with it, we'll understand what happens to the building of our brain with trauma. So today we're going to start with healthy development and our hemispheric development. In the first 2 years of life, it is primarily our right hemisphere that is getting what we call wired. It is the hemisphere that is the most active in the first 2 years of life, and it is very different than the left hemisphere. It is, in a sense, aceptive, meaning that it's self-regulatory. It is has a dominant role in terms of our sense of self. It is internally focused, has a lot to do with mind, sight. It recognizes patterns. It sees things as they are with very little alteration. It produces a lot of our attachment patterns and our autobiographical narratives, and it's sort of the center of our unconscious. So when the right hemisphere is developing, two pivotal things happen in these first 2 years of life. In the first year, what we call the excitatory circuitry is being laid down in the brain. Now, this excitatory circuitry has to do with pleasure, curiosity, the capacity to explore, to discover, to be interested. It has everything to do with saying yes to our lives. And it comes alive through the interaction with those who love us and delight in us, and who are excited to show us the world. And so it's a very positive, kind of unbridled time of life. Implicit memory, of course, is operating. It began in utero, and it's going to function throughout the lifespan. So all of this first year experience is encoded in implicit memory, especially when it is intense, pleasurable, or unpleasurable. It has duration and it repeats. So as we are loved and enjoyed and embraced and delighted in, and in turn we fall in love with being alive and fall in love with the people around us who take care of us and are excited about living, all of that becomes a part of our implicit memory system, the encoding of lived experience, which we will draw on millions of times throughout our lifespan. Now, if that were all that there was to the story, and we just had unending delight and joy and excitement, we would eventually kind of become very narcissistic and just expect life to say yes to us all the time. So hence, in the second year of life, the inhibitory circuitry of the right hemisphere is being laid down. And what does that do? It isn't inhibiting in a negative sense. It's about discovering boundaries. It's about having parameters. It's about the capacity to regulate all of that excitement and to calm and learn about appropriate no's in life. N-O, the no of life. We have early emotional language through gestures and sounds. And again, all of this is being encoded through implicit memory. So the combination of these 2 years is critical because the first year opens us up and brings us great joy and helps us be curious and explore. And the second year of life says, wait a minute, not everything is a yes. Some things are a no for your protection and your safety and well-being. And so it's the partnership of those 2 circuitries working together in the right hemisphere that are going to become a profound guide for us through life, between being excited, inspired, engaged, creative, and alive, and also knowing how to put the brakes on and how to say no, accept no, and realize that there are ways and times and ways of being in order to create and design our lives, but we are doing so in safety and in being protected. Now, if you remember also from our previous video and the arousal chart that I showed you about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, the excitatory circuitry is the sympathetic nervous system, which elevates and arouses. But we can also get out of control, and we can also get chaotic, and we also can get very anxious. And the inhibitory circuitry is involved with the parasympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system, which is the ability to calm that excitement, but it also can shut us down. And so there's a balance between the two. As we talked last time about the accelerator and the braking systems, this is what we're talking about. Now, 2 very important milestones occur during these first 2 years of life. The first, with the excitatory circuitry, happens between 10 and 12 months of age. There is an enormous overproduction of brain cells that become available by the billions. And it is the job of the brain to map those, to put them into a system, to organize them, and to help them wire correctly in the circuitry that is being laid down. If that doesn't happen, then those extra brain cells by the millions are pruned back and lost for good. That is why it is such a critical time of development, because it is the time when a baby is making the richest use of all that is offered environmentally and through nurturing and exploration and excitement and love, so that their brains have this terrific foundation on which to grow. Now, you will see in the children from Romania who are just left in bed and who are in orphanages and just cared for in utilitarian ways without any rocking or nurturance or comfort. By the 3rd year of life, those babies cannot even cry anymore. All they do is rock back and forth in this rhythmical way, and they're almost unreachable. And the PET scans of those children who have been done in research to see what's happened to their brain development, none of the folds that occur in healthy brain development, where the brain is doing this intricate folding process to make use of all of these brain cells and to map them, does not occur. Their brains are smooth and without those folds, a tragic outcome at the very beginning of life. So it is so important for parents and caregivers and extended family to make this a very rich time in a child's life so that their brains have this phenomenally wonderful foundation. Now, in the second year of life, between the ages of 22 and 24 months, there is another enormous overproduction of brain cells, but this time for mapping for the inhibitory or parasympathetic branch of the brain and the nervous system. And this is again for the purpose of having limits and boundaries and safe parameters. And what is not used and what is not mapped is pruned back and lost for good. Those cells that are not used no longer exist. So again, we see the tremendously vital necessity of these pivotal years. That's why they say the first 4 years of life, first 5 years of life, lay the groundwork for the rest of your life. And that doesn't mean the brain does have plasticity, and different parts of the brain can take over functions for other parts of the brain throughout life. But there is a foundational piece that must occur in order for the healthiest development to take place. In the third year of life, the left hemisphere comes on board. Now it's starting to get much more active, and it is now being wired, and it is getting neuronally much denser as the child comprehends, uses, and starts sequencing semantic language. So words, you have accelerated language. Each hemisphere is now becoming much more specialized, and significantly, this is when explicit memory, which is what we think of as recall memory, actually begins. And of course, it continues to function throughout the lifespan as well, as we learned in our video on memory. So this is a vital year. This is a year when the child has been soaking in experience. And yes, they've been babbling and they've had gestures and sounds and lots of expression. But now they are having language to put all of that experience to. And very often you'll see a little 2 and almost 3-year-old in the last couple of months of being 2, when they're around 22, 24 months old, who've been babbling and had some language and short phrases, suddenly overnight seems to know 400 to 600 words and can suddenly start kind of narrating their life experience in the world around them in ways that astounds parents. And it's because the left hemisphere is now getting wired and is coming on board. Then something even more magical happens in the 4th year of life. And this is what, I don't know who named it this, but it's called the Freudian brain. And it is when you have cross-hemispheric communication. So now the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere can cross-communicate with one another. Before then, they each had their kind of isolated jobs. And now all of that learning and experience can get exchanged from the 2 hemispheres. And a 4-year-old child is one of the most delightful creatures on earth, because they now are putting together their minds and their sense of self and their narrative and all the things that they think about and dream about and fear and enjoy. And it is just a beautiful time of life. There is another growth spurt. It supports creation, creativity, and the comprehension of ideas and the linking between ideas in a very creative way. That's why storytelling and imaginative play are so important. And this is also now when the child gets a very much fuller experience of their own autobiography and of how they exist in the world and what their life is like and their sense of I-ness and their sense of agency. Speaking of which, at around the age of 3, when the left hemisphere is coming on board, that is also the time when we want to see a child develop fully their capacity for authorial self. We've talked about this in earlier videos. This is when the child now says, well, I have ideas, I have opinions, I have desires, I have needs, I have wishes, I want this, I don't want this, I like this, I don't like that. And while they don't get everything they want, because of course we have the inhibitory circuitry on board and the limits of no, their ideas and needs and desires are taken seriously. And if a particular form of something can't be obtained or experienced, there are good, safe alternatives that the child can make use of. So this is a time when, as the left hemisphere gets more active, it is assertive, meaning it's engaged now with the world of others, not just the right hemisphere sense of self, but now there is the I-thou relationship. There is me and others. They are active children become active now with the right hemisphere in approaching experience. The left hemisphere is very pivotal in terms of perceiving others and having a sense of what others are feeling. With a combination of these two, and again around the age of 3, you'll see empathy developing. You'll see children beginning to say, oh, I feel so sorry, you're sad, can I share my toy with you? Children become externally focused into a larger world beyond just mommy and just daddy. Now they have playmates. Now they have maybe preschool or daycare, and they have a whole raft of peer relationships that now become very important to them. The left hemisphere helps with logical processing and analytic processing. It's the center of consciousness, whereas the right hemisphere is the center of the unconscious, the left hemisphere is the center of being aware and being active. So this is the essence of hemispheric development. There is so much more to it, but this will give you kind of a basic grounding in what this looks like, and then we'll see how important it is as it interrelates to the other 7 keystones, not only in healthy development, but in terms of trauma and how we work with that. Thank you for being with me. I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.